In 1840s America, there was a buzz in the air, as inventors and thinkers of every kind were chasing solutions to simplify daily life. Elias Howe was one of these dreamers. A slender man with piercing blue eyes. He had dark brown hair, often unruly from hours spent hunched over gears and springs. His hands were calloused from his time spent as a machinist in Lowell, Massachusetts, and he typically wore a simple wool coat over his cotton shirt and trousers. Practical clothing for a man on a modest income, but with high hopes. Elias came from a family that valued hard work. His father, a farmer, had taught him discipline and resourcefulness, while his mother had a talent for needlework and sewing. Elias had watched her sew for hours on end, bending over her work with a sense of patience and skill. But he also noticed the toll it took on her body, especially her fingers. Her thimble-covered hands would tremble with fatigue at the end of the day, and her fingers bore the tiny scars of needles that slipped. Young Elias grew to respect the work of sewing, but he also recognized its limits and longed for a better way. By the time he turned 22, Elias moved to Boston, determined to make a name for himself. He took a job as a machinist, working on delicate instruments. His colleagues laughed at his pipe dreams, as he often muttered to himself about the perfect stitch as he worked. "What's on your mind today, Elias? Are you inventing the world's first flying machine?" They'd jest, noting his habit of staring off into space. But Elias would only smile, brushing his hair from his face, focused more than ever. In 1844, Elias returned home one evening, his hands blackened with machine oil, his worn coat frayed at the cuffs. He sat at the kitchen table with his wife, Elizabeth, who wore a plain cotton dress with a stained apron. She was mending one of his work shirts. As he watched her thread the needle, an idea struck him. What if, he started slowly, there was a machine that could move that needle for you, one that could stitch more quickly than you, and do it precisely? Elizabeth, though exhausted, looked up with a hint of curiosity. Elias became obsessed with the concept of a sewing machine. He studied how needles moved, and in his tiny workshop, he began building prototypes. His first model was rudimentary, a contraption made of wood and metal, with a needle that went in and out but wasn't fast enough. Howe quickly realized that the problem lay with the design of the needle itself. He needed something that would mimic the motions of human hands, but do so at a rapid pace. Months passed, and Elias became more withdrawn. He spent long hours in his workshop, his clothes getting dustier, his trousers worn through at the knees as he knelt to adjust pieces of machinery. Eventually, he decided to put a tiny eye at the pointed end of the needle rather than at the base, allowing it to pass through the fabric in a single smooth motion. It was a breakthrough moment, and he felt his heart pound with excitement. By the time he completed the prototype in 1845, Elias's clothing had taken on a near-pathetic quality. His once white shirts were permanently smudged, and his boots had lost their shine. Yet, he had a functional sewing machine that could sew 250 stitches a minute, a feat no human hand could match. Eager to showcase his invention, Elias gathered the townspeople to witness the sewing machine in action. The day was cool, and Elias wore his best, albeit still shabby, wool coat. His friends and family gathered in the workshop, watching with awe as the machine worked its magic. "It's witchcraft," one woman whispered, clutching her bonnet. His father, wearing his worn brown hat and patched pants, patted Elias proudly on the shoulder, finally realizing the depth of his son's vision.